Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm Leo Kowalski, the Director of Transformation with the Pennsylvania Solar Center. I'm going to introduce my colleagues and we'll go around the room, the virtual room, and introduce ourselves, and we'll get into the programming. So I'll hand it to our Executive Director, Sharon Pilley.
Hi, that's me, and I'll pass it to Kat.
Hi everyone, I'm Kat. It's nice to meet you all again.
Can the folks from the Energy Authority Green Capital introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa Shulock, Director of Commercial Programs for the Philadelphia Energy Authority.
I'm Atiba Kenyatta, Commercial Programs Outreach Manager for the Philadelphia Energy Authority.
And I'm Rashika Ghosh with the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp. We're the Green Bank affiliate of the Energy Authority. Excited to be here.
Great. Thank you. Shannon, you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Shannon Corker with Generation 180. I'm the Pennsylvania Director. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to call out people. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Jeremy Melber. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Phoenixville Area School District.
Thank you. Erminella? That's correct.
I'm Ramanella. You're correct. I'm from State College Area School District. I'm the accountant.
Great. And last but not least, I just see Emrana, so I'm just not going to guess at that name.
No, that's okay. I'm Madison Renna. I'm an architect with Crabtree Roban Associates.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you. Um, we're really grateful for everyone joining the call. Little table setting. We want to go through a little bit about the Solar Center, a little bit about the programming that we've developed that has brought some of you folks to this call today. And then we're going to get into procurement opportunities that would allow you to complete these solar projects, or districts that are associated with your organization to complete the solar projects. We're going to present a little bit of information about the GISA method with our partners and friends at Philadelphia Energy Authority and Philly Green Capital Corporation. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Get Solar program and how we're going to work through like a more conventional procurement methodology, but by working together with lots of schools, sort of streamline that process as well. So getting into it, a little bit about us. Our mission and vision are on the page here, but what I really want to cover with this is when we talk a little bit about how our ambition is to help all Pennsylvanians move through the clean energy economy, and solar is our vehicle, obviously, of choice for that. But that phrase, all Pennsylvanians, is really important to how we think about our mission and how we approach our work. And I think it's so relevant to exactly what we're talking about today, because when a school goes solar or chooses to go solar, the impact felt by that, it impacts not only the staff and the board and folks that are connected to the school, it's also every ratepayer in that community whose taxes supports that entity. Now that pressure is alleviated, like solar provides savings and affects the community completely. And it's not a story that I think we are always very good at telling about the way that solar can impact the community in positive ways. Like every time a residential or commercial solar installation goes in, that reduces the need to bring energy into that grid, and that solar is operational, which reduces costs for everybody. So every solar installation has an impact that can be really broadly applicable. And solar is so dynamic in that we can talk about putting solar on a rooftop or on the property of a school district, and you really can't put a power plant in your backyard otherwise. So it's a really exciting technology, and the way that we can do the work does have that social and community benefit. And so we just want folks to keep that in mind as you're moving through your process, that the storytelling is super important. The more that we can talk about the impact that your solar system has on your community and the positive thing that that does for everybody, I think that'll have a noticeable effect on solar adoption moving forward. And, it definitely tells like the visionary work that you're doing. We are supported primarily. Largest supporters are our foundation community. That's largely focused in Western Pennsylvania with the Heinz Hillman and Richard King Mellon foundations. But we've recently engaged with the Fund Partnership Program with our friends at Philadelphia Energy Authority, working with some of the foundation community in that side of the state, and trying to maximize our impact to cover every region and every corner of the Commonwealth. We do also get significant support from organizations within the industry. So, along with Green Tech Renewables, our new petawatt sponsor, get a lot of support from solar developers and folks in the electrical industry, because they appreciate the work that we do, and the opportunities that creates. Where they are also our clients, also benefactors of the work that the Solar Center is trying to accomplish. We do our work primarily through three buckets that we call it, the transform, educate, and advocate. We'll spend a lot of time today in the transform space talking about how we work directly with you and other organizations to complete solar projects, but a little bit more about advocacy and education. We'll definitely get into a little bit about the IRA and the implications of the current House reconciliation or Senate reconciliation process. But very critical that our educators, lawmakers, the civic leaders, that they are engaged and involved in good solar policy. The future of energy is very volatile. We're consuming enormous amounts of it, and we're consuming more and more. Our energy usage is going way, way up. It's not going down. A lot of that to do with the electrification of systems that previously were not electrified, and the increase in AI data centers, like a lot of high usage infrastructure being developed. And so it's really important that Pennsylvania and even our communities, when it comes to permitting and ordinances, are doing the work to create more solar opportunity, not less. We need solar, and we need solar to address these demands. And it's very important that we as a entity to advocate for these things, but also you as a consumer, as a community member, are also thinking about how you're engaging with those lawmakers to make sure that we have robust solar policy. The outreach public awareness resources. We have some really wonderful tools on our website, like a landowner's guide for folks that own property, like a farmer or just a large landowner that maybe is approached by a solar developer to do a utility scale system. While we don't work in utility scale specifically, we want to provide this resource so folks know what is best practices, what are their economic rights in that field. Like when you're engaging with a solar developer, it allows you to have resources to engage as an equal and ensure that you're protecting yourself. We also have a solar developer directory for folks to find solar developers in their region. If, let's say, they are a residential customer and we won't necessarily support them through a program, they could identify county by county folks that could do the work for them. We also have quarterly or semi-annual Lodestar Award, where we're looking at leaders in these communities, especially places where solar adoption is just starting to ramp up, trying to identify folks that have done that trailblazing on behalf of their community and uplift their stories. We also have newsletters and frequent webinars that cover solar topics that are important and relevant for the day. I will turn it over to our Executive Director, Sharon Pillar, to talk a little bit more about the Inflation Reduction Act and the current Senate reconciliation process.
Thanks a lot, Leo, and thanks everyone for going down this journey, and we're so happy to do that with you. I think this is kind of what we say, the big elephant in the room. Lots of questions around what's happening at the federal level, and all of your projects were the feasibility and financial capability and the analysis that went along with that had figured in the tax benefits from the Inflation Reduction Act. Specifically, just to review what you all probably did have in your projections was the 30% we call elective pay. So obviously schools can't take a tax credit, but the Inflation Reduction Act included something called elective pay, which is in lieu of the tax credit. You would apply and get the grant. And some school districts are located in energy communities, so they're eligible for another 10%. And then there's some ability, although maybe limited, to get what's called domestic content materials that have a higher percentage of manufactured in the U.S., which is eligible for another 10%. So these tax benefits really are adding up. And then, as I think maybe most of you know, the House passed their reconciliation bill a couple weeks ago that essentially would take those tax credits away by the end of the year for both residential and commercial solar. And the projects would have to be under construction within 60 days of the passage of the bill. So none of your projects will be at that stage if that bill passes. The bill is now in the Senate. There's a lot of advocacy happening to try to convince the Senate that they need a longer timetable before those tax credits go away or start ramping down. Currently, in the current law is that these tax benefits would be around through 2032. So we are hopeful that there's some movement from what we're hearing to at least not end them abruptly by the end of this year, but maybe would be extended a few more years. Regardless, we don't think they'll stay at till ending and ramp. They're supposed to ramp down in 2032. That's most likely not going to hang around. So, best case scenario, they'll move that date of 2032 earlier. Don't know when. Worst case scenario, it stays as it is and they end this year. Because you have a grant, and some of you have grant up to 50%, you're in a much better situation than a lot of projects that were just depending solely on these tax benefits. So I think, and we'll do the analysis, but in most cases, you will be still in a positive situation going forward with or without the tax benefits. It'll just be a good situation or a better situation. And it's still positive. You're still locking in your electricity rates because you'll know you're paying up front for the cost of the solar. So you're locking in stable electricity prices for 30 years or more. So I just want to impress, I know that the expectation is obviously much better at the 30% or 40% level that you were expecting, but it's still not a horrible situation if it would go away. So because of the fluctuation here, we've heard some schools or entities that we work with are just saying, well, we're just going to wait. And we're actually encouraging people to do the exact opposite thing. And as I said, if there'll be we expect some changes. So the faster you move down and getting ready to move forward, the better off you are going to be. So it could be possible that they end these tax benefits at the end of next year. And so it's going to take some time to get your project out to bid. The developers are having supply chain issues. So the sooner you can lock into an agreement with a developer, you're going to be in a much better position to move forward. Anyone that you're signing an agreement with, there'll be provisions that you would want to include and you will include dependent upon what happens at the federal level. But I just really want to encourage you not to take your foot off the gas pedal, but instead push down a little bit harder so that we can move you faster through the process and that you can get to the place where you have your bids in hand, that have identified what financing you'd be using and even a developer. So we expect that something's going to happen in the Senate maybe in the next week, maybe tomorrow, we don't know. But likely through July, we would know something. The other scenario is that the bill, if it does get changed, has to go back to the House for approval there. So there could be some contention there and lack of agreement by the time that they need to address the debt ceiling. And if that is all that they do, the rest of it kind of goes away for now because then they will need, it's a whole different process in Congress, and they will need much more bipartisan support to make changes to the IRA without going through this current budget reconciliation process. So, anyhow, I'll just stop there and see if anyone has any questions about that. And we can continue, if you think of them later, that's fine too. But yeah, again, just encouraging folks to move as quickly as possible.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Okay, well, so brighter future ahead. Just talking a little bit about, and I'm sure folks are well aware on this call, the Solar for Souls grant, but just a little bit about our participation in it. we are constantly working with school districts in and out of the Solar for Schools context, about 88 schools in our program. 24 of the schools that we supported applications received the award. We have worked with 5 schools through our RFP program prior to that, and largely in the power purchase agreement context, which is not an eligible funding mechanism for grantees. But we've also supported 3 schools in either completing a fully installed solar array, or they're in the process of having their solar array installed. And honestly, I believe I'll have another one of those boards moving to vote yes in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be able to bump that number up. And as Sharon mentioned, it can be a fairly long process if there are variables on the installation side of it. So it is very important that folks move as quickly as possible, because I would have more fully installed systems to date if there weren't challenges that kind of come up on the road. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but we are excited that you folks are at the beginning of this process and we can start this journey down with you. A little bit about the grant contract. Obviously, if you have like deeper questions about the contracting, this was an opportunity to speak with the DCD. They've been really wonderful on our end in terms of responsiveness and answering questions. But really important things to understand here, high level, is that once a contract has been sent, you have 45 days to complete that contract. If you send an amendment or a question or a concern back with the contract, that resets the clock. So you don't necessarily have 45 days very strictly to do all of the review work, as long as you're communicating with the DCED and have like meaningful feedback on the contract, that amends your time. And then once you're fully executed on the contract, you'll receive a payment request form. And as you start to incur costs, you can submit payment requests for those costs with the supporting documents. And there's a lot of opportunity here to work with the solar developers, given the design of this system and this award, to ensure that you're not incurring costs and having like money, like cash outlays for long periods of time. You can line it up in such a way that you can submit those invoices and hopefully receive your award right around when you actually have to end up paying it. So you're not floating lots of cash through the process. But again, that's a conversation we can expand more, working with you and working with the DCD to provide clarity as needed. A little bit about our structure of a Get Solar process, and then we'll switch into the procurement methods. But a lot of you work with this already. Basic solar feasibility, high-level savings analysis, that was required for the Solar for Schools grant. It's the work that we do, so that was pretty convenient. But we do that with every organization, and with every organization, we try to move through these other steps as well. We're excited to help you folks solicit competitive bids from qualified solar developers, sorry. That process for a public entity going out to bid is pretty specific and strict in the way that can occur, but there are some allowances for us ensuring what a competitive bid produces. So like what a qualified solar project looks like, to ensure that you're getting the like high quality bids from folks that have the resume to accomplish that. The review and compare proposals is a little bit less salient in this operation, because we are bound by those statutes on how you have to procure. But like I said, we can pre-engineer some of that to ensure that sort of absorbing some of the outliers and making sure that you're getting specifically very much what you want through that bidding program. And then really importantly, like we will work with you on identifying the key pieces of financing that gets us over the finish line. Like we'll be speaking of this, and Friends of the Energy Authority will speak of this, but obviously there's still going to be some cash outlay, especially assuming that ITC, those tax credits are preserved. That is a reimbursement. So the system, you'll start to incur costs, need to have some kind of financing to bridge that until you would receive your money 18 to 24 months later. And so, developing a financing strategy is something that we're really focused on working with you. And last thing I'll say on that topic is, can't really announce much of it today, but we've been working with some partners to maybe present an opportunity to do some creative financing measures, because we have like dozens of schools looking to go solar at the same time. There might be some ways that schools can engage in a process that would reduce costs both in the procurement of the materials and in the getting advantaged financing. I think we have a little bit more about that later in the presentation, so I won't stick into it too much here. But yeah, really, I mean, from here on, you're kind of moving in one of two really meaningful directions. The GISA ESCO model, which our friends will talk about in a moment, and the public competitive bid process, which we will focus on through the work we're doing with the Get Solar program. I'll talk a little bit about that latter in more detail, but I will now stop talking and hand it over to friends at the Philadelphia Energy Authority.
Thank you so much, Leo, Sharon, and Kat. Great to be here with you this afternoon. As I mentioned, I am Lisa Shulock, Director of Commercial Programs, and we are partnered with the PA Solar Center through grant funding from the William Penn Foundation and the Green Family Foundation to do outreach to all commercial entities, all commercial property owners, municipalities, schools, businesses, nonprofits, etc., to educate them about the benefits of going solar. And this is in the 5-county Southeast Pennsylvania region. And when we find prospects, and when I say we, I really mean my colleague Atiba, who is our outreach manager, then we pass them along to the PA Solar Center for them to do their great work that Leo just described in their 4-part process. Next, please. So you folks are from all different parts of the state. You may or may not know about the Philadelphia Energy Authority. We are Philly-based municipal authority, and our mission is to use clean energy as a tool for economic impact and job creation, much like the PA Solar Center, except our work is regional and we are focused on all clean energy, including solar, but also including building energy efficiency and related endeavors to reduce energy consumption and create a more healthy environment. Next, please. So we can go to the next one after that too. So Leo asked us to dig in a little bit to talk more about what the GISA, using GISA as a potential procurement method when you proceed with your solar projects. And the reason is we have the Philadelphia Energy Authority has worked for quite a few years with the City of Philadelphia and with the School District of Philadelphia to procure mainly energy efficiency projects, but also a big street lighting project using the state act, which the GISA stands for Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, also known as GISA, and it's all about helping public entities to procure services to reduce their energy cost and use, and you need to hire a qualified provider through a bidding process for a project, and then you get fixed pricing with performance guarantees. So we'll talk, and I'll share a case study in a little bit about a school district who did use GISA. It has been more commonly used for energy efficiency projects, but it is also very well suited to solar projects as well. So what it does is it helps you as a school district or any public entity to invest in long-term energy saving projects without requiring using your capital line for it. And it's actually more procurement than it is financing, but I'll talk about that in a moment. And as we know, with solar and many other energy projects, you're going to basically, your operational savings are going to pay for the cost of the system. Next. So a little bit more details. So you would hire through GISA, you would put out a request for proposals. You can actually do it. You can do a request for qualifications and then an RFP, but typically you would just do an RFP that can be facilitated and through work with the PA Solar Center. And the first thing that happens is the winning bidder will perform an investment grade audit, which basically is confirming the information that was prepared in their proposal in terms of the performance of the system, the energy usage of the facility, etc. And then and there's a performance guarantee involved. So which really is what makes it stand out from a traditional procurement. So you get a guarantee of the amount of solar that is going to be generated from that system, and it can be up to a 20-year payback period. And so that will our experience is that can motivate the winning firm to complete their project on time, because they have a clock that's starting to tick to make sure that they can meet that performance guarantee. With a traditional procurement, typically you're spending some time and money up front to create the whole project plan, and you also are generally required to select the lowest responsible bidder. You may be doing that in the GISA world as well, but the main thing that you don't have is that performance guarantee. You can write it into contracts. GISA gives you a little bit more certainty around that, and then you don't have the payback requirement that you get with GISA. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the financing options are basically the same with solar, and because you all have received or will be receiving the Solar for Schools grants, you obviously know that you're required to own the system. If you have other projects in the future or have had projects in the past, you know that, or you may know that a power purchase agreement where you're actually not the owner of the system is another financing methodology for solar, but that's not available to you in this situation, which is fine because you've got other types of financing options, including bonding and other ways that you finance long-term capital projects. And so it's independent of the procurement process that you choose. Next. So for the phases of a GISA project are very similar to what you'll see with any major project like this. You're going to do your preliminary assessment and planning, and as Leo noted before, you've already done your feasibility work, so that's fantastic. And after you've done your contracting, excuse me, with DCED, then you're going to move to the RFP phase, and you're going to select the firm that you want to work with or the solar developer. That IGA is completed, which is not that different than the proposal that they will have created anyway. And then you implement your project, and then the performance period, which typically can be the entire length of the contract, which will be 20 years if you're using GISA, is the M&V period. Next. So Shannon, who's on in this meeting, was able to introduce me to the folks from Huntington Area School District. Shannon from Generation 180. They have put solar on 2 of their schools, in the process of getting it on a 3rd school. They used GISA as their procurement process. They contracted with Snyder Electric, and this was an almost $10 million project. And they also are eligible for almost about $1 million, a little over $1 million from elective pay. So they are obviously a little bit further along than you all are. And they're projecting saving $5.8 million for their school district, which is, as you can see, it's 1,700 students. It's not a large school district, but that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of savings for those taxpayers. Next. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So this is a photo of one of their schools that solar installed, and their superintendent, Jennifer Mitchell. I'll just let you all read what she said, but they're quite happy. And she unfortunately wasn't able to join us today, but she said she'd be happy to be a resource if anybody wants to talk with her about their experience and their process. And I think I'm just going to say one more thing here, which is to just highlight what Sharon said earlier. They obviously did not get a Solar for Schools grant because that wasn't around when they did these projects. And this is, but they got their 30% elective pay, or they will be getting their 30% elective pay. And it was still a great financial benefit for them. And you guys some of you may be up to 50% of your cost being reimbursed. So it's going to be an even better, even if you can't get the 30% elective pay, you're starting with the Solar for Schools grant is going to be pretty great. So I certainly want to echo what Sharon said is instead of putting your foot on the gas, put your foot on the accelerator in case you have a battery that's a motor that's driving your car instead of a internal combustion engine. All right, I'm going to pass this next to my colleague Rashika Ghosh.
Hello, I'm Rashika. Nice to meet you guys. I'm the Senior Manager of Partnerships and Clean Energy Products at Philadelphia Green Capital Corp, or PGCC. If you would mind going to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we're an affiliate of PEA. We were launched really to support a lot of the financing work that supplements a lot of the work that PEA is doing, in addition to really supporting also other clean energy financing mechanisms. We've really been focused on low-income solar and like some green and healthy homes initiatives in Philadelphia County specifically. But over the last year and looking ahead, we're really expanding into the broader Southeast Pennsylvania region to support all sorts of clean energy projects, including solar on schools, which is why I'm here to talk to you today. We're going to skip ahead a little bit in my slide, if you don't mind going to the next slide, Kat. We're going to skip ahead a little bit to talk about financing. It applies not just to the GISA contract, but also to any sort of ownership model if you decide to go down the other procurement route as well. So note that this applies for both, as Lisa mentioned. But I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the types of costs that a school might incur during this process and just how to think about potential different kinds of financing that might be supplemental or helpful as you're thinking about fundraising, finding other sources of capital, making your project whole. So before even operation starts, you might have various kinds of construction costs as you're getting started. This might mean, needing access to a working line of credit, having some sort of working capital to hit some sort of construction milestones. And that's where something like construction financing can come in handy. If that's something that you're pursuing, just think about those options early, especially to help get like good rates and early, and then also thinking about how to find a good provider that you might want to work with. And then, after operation begins, so this means like after the solar project itself is built, there's a lot of different kinds of costs that might be incurred, right? So obviously during the construction phase, you have all the costs that go into like the capital improvement plan. It's the full capital stack. That's kind of what's depicted on the right-hand side here. So that would mean that this is the cost of, any sort of soft cost that you incurred, as well as any sort of hard cost that you incurred. So this means like, I don't know, some sort of a consultant that you might have had to work with, the cost of maybe doing an investment grade audit if you decide to go down that route doing it yourself. And then also, the cost of the panels, the inverters, etc. So there's a few different kind of components that might help offset some of that cost. The first is a utilities incentive. Most utilities in Pennsylvania at this time have some sort of an incentive that can help bring down the cost of your project. Varies from utility to utility, but that can definitely support the costs a little bit and bring down that cost. As we've been talking about elective pay, direct pay, the investment tax credit, there is still a running assumption right now, as Sharon mentioned, that it is still an eligible form of reimbursement. And our understanding is that for schools that are able to begin some sort of construction by the end of this year, even regardless of what's happening with the federal reconciliation bill, we're still expecting them to be able to be eligible for the direct pay. So as you're thinking about timing, that can definitely impact your project costs and how you might be thinking about reimbursement. So putting that for food for thought again. And then of course, you have your Solar for Schools grant that might help bring down some of that cost as well. And then the final gap is basically just kind of what you want it to be. As Lisa mentioned earlier, this might mean that you might already have existing capital campaign or some sort of funds already eligible that you might be able to apply towards a project. You might consider some sort of bond financing if that's something that your school is eligible for and you can get really good rates for. And then also the other aspect is always like debt. Thinking about permanent debt for long-term financing, about 20 to 25 years can really be a good way, especially as we're thinking about broader savings, from your operating costs from putting solar on your roof as a mechanism for paying it back. So things to consider there. Something I'll share also is just like PGCC, we're really here to work with as many schools as possible. While our focus area really is Southeast Pennsylvania, we do work with the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority and other CDFIs, green banks, other entities that can support projects around the state. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility for us to support as many projects as we can, especially all the awarded recipients. So, the three different kind of mechanisms that could be beneficial are, so we talk about construction financing, providing some sort of working capital line of credit for flexibility up front. And then as you're thinking about, some of these other more flexible pots of money, including the elective pay, direct pay, which might take upwards of almost 2 years sometimes for applications to be processed. Things like utilities incentives would take a couple of months after you complete an application. And then also the Solar for Schools grant, which is a reimbursable grant. It might have a little bit of timing constraints around like when you might be able to get that funding back. You might still need to pay your contractor in the meantime though. So those are opportunities to potentially like bridge funding that might be helpful. And then of course, as we talked about, the long-term permanent financing. So thinking about like a 20-year grant, basically any sort of capital that you might have that you don't have already raised or at line of sight to, that can be something that PGCC can also help with. So putting this out there that we're currently scaling up our programs right now, and happy to talk a little bit more about what that can entail. And I'll put my contact information in the chat, as will Atiba and Lisa. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Yeah, can I just add a couple of things?
Sure.
Right. I just wanted to ask, thank you for going over the GISA benefits. There are a couple of considerations too. I just wanted to clarify is that the school, my understanding is, would be putting out a bid for an ESCO, so the energy service company, and then they would be designing and then probably subcontracting the solar project after they do the energy audit phase. So there's a little different, they have to do that energy piece of it, energy assessment. And then you're bidding your project to an ESCO, which I think you only need to bid it to a few of them. Where the bid side, you're bidding and it's an open public bid and you're getting directly, in many cases, directly right from the solar contractors. So there may be difference in costs in the results of that. So I just, this could be some of the differences that you would be seeing, I think.
That's a really good point, Sharon. And I think, basically you're paying for that performance guarantee, right? So you get the performance guarantee, but that doesn't come free. So very good point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I think, what we're trying to present folks is that there are pathways that might suit your needs better. I mean, I think that having comfort and security is obviously very important to public entities. And we'll do our best to provide that on the bidding side of it as well through some of the group methodology that we're going to assign and some of the legal support that we'll be engaging with, which I don't think I covered at the top. And I think the real takeaway in us co-presenting on this call is that there are folks that can help. This is not, going solar is not new. Going solar, if you're a school district, is not new. The grant is, and that's a huge, exciting added bonus, but this is not an unsolved space, and folks can help you get over the finish line and have the resources to do so. And so that's a really exciting and I think important thing for folks to hear as you're contemplating what's next. So a little bit about competitive bidding process from our perspective and how we want to move forward. If this is the route that your district feels like is appropriate, in the way that we want to approach this is having build some consensus across multiple districts. So we will be engaging with third-party legal support that will be made available as well outside of your general solicitor working on this. They may or may not have a lot of expertise in procurement and or solar, but we're going to bring folks in that do have expertise in that. And that'll help us draft a bidding document that is ideally streamlined for every district to leverage it and to not have to make significant changes. There's a lot of advantages of that. You're not going in it alone. You're not going at it with sort of a unique take on this. It's a lot better for the solar developers and a lot easier to make sure that competitive bids are apples to apples and that you're getting the best value because we've sort of factored in as many of these variables that can be addressed up front, and everybody's working in the same playing field. So solar developers can provide, maybe would be incentivized to provide bids on multiple sites, whereas previously maybe it would take them a lot more time to engineer one bid. So if there is an organization that can provide a really, really streamlined and excellent bid for you, they're not competing between you and the other districts, or they're not weighing in how much time they can evaluate because we've made this a lot slicker for them. We typically through this process can help you organize the site visits and ensure there's some uniformity there. And we can include language in the bid packet that pre-vets qualified solar developers in very specific parameters, like the type of certifications that are industry standard, NABCEP certification, for example, and ensure that the system design that goes into the bid packet is producing the electricity that you want it to produce, like the system size and the production are in key with like the feasibility report and anything that's changed in between since then. And then really what we're trying to distill this down to is a very simple criteria for evaluating. When you unseal that bid and you're choosing what's the best reasonable value, it's really price per watt installed. So if you've walked into a solar array of a very specific size and equal or better solar equipment that you feel like makes the most sense for your project or that we can help you decide, price per watt determines who can do it at the least amount of cost. And knowing that we've set a minimum standard for the quality of bidder that can respond, then what you're getting is the best value for your dollar spent. We work with some public entities with this procurement method, and we feel pretty confident that you would get an abundance of bids. I mean, a lot of folks in the developer world have been watching the Solar for Schools program, and we anticipate there's a lot of action when folks put this out to bid. So we just want to make sure that the bidding process is as simple as possible for you as well. To get a bid together, here's a list of items, and we're going to disseminate this webinar and contact information for folks participating, both the recording and the slide decks for everyone that's participated, so you can circulate it and reach out and ask questions. But really, you need that proof inside contract, obviously. We will create that space to review the bid packet with the solicitor ahead of time. We'll be doing that in concert with other districts, so we will try to, if there are things that are picked up by a solicitor at school A, and we'll make sure that school B sees that too, so that you know that this is seen, a lot of eyes have looked at this and have passed the mustard. The written statement explaining why the school is interested in going solar, that's pretty boilerplate. And then dates and times for site visits and board scheduling, and these are separate bullets, but just kind of lumping this concept together. Having runway to a successful bid is understanding when you can host folks on site and what to identify maybe things that are a feasibility study can do a lot of work, but it can't match like a seasoned veteran's eyes when they're actually walking the site and can pick out something that may or may not improve their ability to provide you what you need. So being able to provide that opportunity for folks to be on site is very important. And then understanding when your board can meet and vote to move this forward, especially in the event that we're working in a truncated timeline for whatever reason, knowing that you can actually get the board scheduled to review and select the bidder is essential, really essential to have eyes that early. Public announcement of the bid. This is nothing new to you folks, but this not doing that is a real problem. Both in terms of legality of the bid, but also just you won't get as many eyes as you'd like on your project. And then very critically, there should be a dot with 10 stars next to it is the strategy to financing the system. And while we're putting it at the end of the process, it is something that we'll want to work on and think about immediately. Echoing a lot of what Lisa and Rashika said, there's a capital stack here that needs to put together that It's not really that complicated when you really break it down. There's a lot of ins and outs, but they're an ally and we're an ally in getting you through that process in a very simplified way, so you can just enjoy the financial benefit of your solar. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just touch this point again. We are trying to consolidate some legal support and some potential financing opportunities that would benefit both the solar developer because of the scale of opportunity here. I mean, you think about 20 schools going solar, for example, with relatively large projects, you consolidate that into one purchasing opportunity, and that's a significant amount of solar. I mean, that's utility scale solar. So scaling economics could be represented by virtue of just putting these all out to bid and making that product available at those prices, as well as like the financing opportunities. So there are solar specific lenders that can provide, in addition to our friends at PGCC, like that there are other folks out there if you're moving in a different direction, that can maybe look at this large portfolio of opportunity and see a strong incentive to provide the absolute best rate, and we want to make that available to you folks as well. So as we drill those conversations down really rapidly, we'll provide you that information if you're going to work through our program or have us support your bidding. But I want to stop there and create some space for folks to ask questions or just have a little bit of dialogue. I know we don't have a ton of folks on the call here, so it might be a little easier to just have conversations about the topics we covered or other things that are adjacent to this that are on your mind. This website link doesn't really help in a visual presentation, but our website is www.pasolarcenter.org. So I will stop talking and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, hi, I'm Steve Backer with Community College of Philadelphia. I just had something that caught my ear earlier in the presentation was when you were talking about the grant reimbursement process, submitting invoices and getting reimbursements. I thought I heard you say that can take 18 to 24 months.
No, I apologize.
Paid back, the dollars are paid back, or the 50% or whatever.
Yeah, so I think the wire got crossed there is the direct pay, the federal tax incentive can take 18 to 24.
Oh, okay, that's what
yeah.
You're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, no, fortunately the Solar for Schools reimbursement should be considerably faster. And there, we both in our presentation and Rashika covered that, there could be points where you would want to or need to leverage some upfront capital, but the turnaround should be relatively quick, and we can be strategic in how the invoicing takes place. And speaking to what DCED said themselves, at the launch of this program, they wanted, within the legal constraints that they had and having it be a reimbursement, they wanted to create some space for schools to not have to be sitting on empty capital for long periods of time. So much, much faster. But yeah, the ITC, the federal tax incentive, 18 to 24 months is a safe bet for having that cash in hand.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion. Any other questions, folks, or any other pieces we want to talk? Is the reimbursement done on a quarterly basis? That was a good question. I don't know if folks at the Energy Authority are sharing, if you have insight into that.
I'm sorry, which reimbursement from the state for the grant, or?
Yeah, that would be good context. Manila, is that what you're speaking? Solar grant, yeah.
So the solar grant, the reimbursement's on a rolling basis whenever you submit your payment request. So DCD will reimburse you within the 30 days after you submit the request. So it's just rolling as they come in.
Okay, great. Yeah. But 30-day windows, excellent. Yeah. Kat's our school's expert, so I should have just kicked to her first.
And I'll comment on, for those of you in PICO territory, the PICO incentive, what we're hearing is, like, from the point that you get your permission to operate from PICO, you need to have about 2 months of operating data to share with them. and then the reimbursement will happen pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, for the utility rebate, the PICO rebate, yeah.
Yes, which is 10 cents per kilowatt hour of the projected first year production.
Very nice rebate. Consistently, PICO has a nice rebate. All the investor-owned utilities have some form of rebate. That's certainly the best, but those are available, and it's just another little piece of the capital stack that, again, ITC or not, there are incentives and there are opportunities here to make sure that your solar pays back. And frankly, I didn't touch on this a ton earlier, but it's worth maybe repeating at the end. Electricity prices are going up, and the reason they're going up is because we're consuming tons of electricity and we're losing the generation sources we have. And that's not going to stop happening in the foreseeable future. Like, 2 years ago, we'd have conversations with folks and they'd say, well, what if electricity prices going down? That conversation is not happening anymore. That's not on the table. So, whether or not there are tax incentives or whether or not other opportunities are available, we are increasingly working against just the opportunity cost is very high to just keep purchasing electricity as is. And I know folks applied for this grant for a reason, and I don't mean to sell you on that, but I just want to provide additional clarity that ITC or not, folks with this grant are in a really good position, and we would really like to get you through the process as quickly as possible. Any other questions? Great. I mean, we'll be available, and we'll circulate contacts with Lisa and Rashika to make sure that if anybody thinks of anything later, or circulating it through your board or your faculty, things come up, we're certainly available. And I imagine that's Lisa and Rashika, you'd be happy to hear from folks any hour of the night, they say. No, well, thank you so much for joining the call today, everybody. We really appreciate our friends working on this stuff as well on the other side of the state, and we think this is such a cool opportunity for schools. It's a cool opportunity for a state, and if it's successful, we'll see more of it. So you folks are the trailblazers. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.